In a city where the stars whisper secrets to the stage, she was the light everyone adored, and he the shadow no one ever saw. But when fate crossed their paths, love defied every rule of heaven and earth. This is a story of two souls, bound by music, cursed by eternity, and destined to find each other again, no matter how many worlds tried to keep them apart. The Star and the Stagehand, where light meets shadow and love becomes the most beautiful act of all. Please subscribe to my channel, help me get to 100 subscribers, like, share, and comment. The Celesta Theater shimmered like a jewel in the heart of Lunaris City, its glass dome reflecting the silver light of a rising moon. Crowds gathered beneath the grand archways, their laughter mingling with the hum of anticipation. Tonight was not just another premiere, it was her night. Elara Voss, the name on every poster, every whisper, every dream of stardom. She had risen faster than anyone in the city's glittering world of fame. Her face was radiant under the soft glow of backstage mirrors, her gown a cascade of white silk that caught the faintest spark of light. But beneath the perfect smile and carefully drawn eyeliner, Elara's heart was trembling. She stared at her reflection, a flawless mask framed by waves of gold hair, and for a moment she didn't recognize the woman staring back. "You're ready," her manager said briskly, handing her a bouquet of star lilies, the theater's good luck flower. Elara nodded, her fingers tightening around the stems until one petal fell. Outside, applause thundered through the walls. The orchestra swelled, the stage lights ignited, and deep below the wooden floorboards, someone else was watching. In the labyrinth of ropes, pulleys, and dust below the stage, Kael Arden moved like a shadow. He was the one who made the magic happen unseen, adjusting lights, mending torn costumes, making sure everything flowed without faltering. He never missed a cue, but tonight, something felt different. The moment Elara stepped into the light, Kael felt a tremor in the air, like the breath of something alive, ancient, and waiting. He paused, his hand hovering over a rusted lever. A faint shimmer rippled through the boards above him, a whisper that only he could hear. "She's here." The voice was soft as wind, but it curled through his chest like fire. Kael shook his head, forcing himself back to focus. It was exhaustion or imagination. He'd worked too many nights under the hum of spotlights and the hum of forgotten dreams. And yet, when Elara's voice rose in song above, pure and aching, the light from the stage seemed to reach through the cracks, golden, alive, and for a heartbeat, it touched him. The audience sat entranced. Every note, every movement, every tear from Elara felt like the truth itself. She wasn't just acting, she was living something. The story of loss, hope, and rebirth echoed with a strange power that made even the chandeliers tremble faintly. Then, at the crescendo, something unexpected happened. The main spotlight flickered. Just once, a soft gasp swept through the crowd. The director signaled frantically from the wings. Kael was already moving, climbing ladders and ropes in practiced silence. He reached the light rigging, tools in hand, and began fixing the wire. But when his eyes drifted down to the stage, time seemed to stop. Elara stood in the center of the stage, her arms raised, her eyes wide and distant, as if she saw something no one else could. Behind her, light poured like liquid gold, forming the shape of a star. Kael froze. The same symbol glowed faintly across his wrist, a birthmark he'd had since childhood, now shimmering with the same ethereal hue. Then, as quickly as it came, the light vanished. The show continued. The audience, swept back into the performance, forgot the flicker. But Kael did not. After the curtain fell, thunderous applause echoed through the theater. Elara bowed, the tears in her eyes real this time, from exhaustion or something deeper. She couldn't tell. As she stepped backstage, everyone surrounded her, congratulating, praising, smiling. Everyone except the man who had fixed the light. Down in the quiet below, Kael packed away his tools, his heart restless. He didn't believe in fate, only in bolts and wires, in things that broke and could be mended. But when he closed his eyes, he could still see her, the actress, bathed in starlight, her gaze lost somewhere beyond this world. And when he opened them again, he saw it. A faint trail of golden dust leading from the stage down toward the old, sealed trap door at the far end of the catwalk. No one had opened that door in years, not since the accident that took the life of the last actress who'd played that same role. Kael hesitated only a moment before stepping closer, because somewhere deep inside, he already knew. Tonight was the beginning of something that would unravel the boundaries between light and shadow, between love and legend. Morning came softly to Lunaris. The theater's marble corridors gleamed with the afterglow of triumph. Headlines were already declaring Elara Voss, the star who lit the sky. But behind the glamour, Elara sat alone in the empty rehearsal hall, the echo of applause still ringing faintly in her mind. The success should have felt like victory, yet all she felt was an aching emptiness, a silence between her ribs that no ovation could fill. She touched the faint mark near her collarbone, hidden beneath silk, a shimmer that hadn't been there before last night. When she closed her eyes, she could still see it, the golden flare that had enveloped her during her final scene. What was that light? "Miss Voss," came a gentle voice from the doorway. It was Director Lysandra Vale, her posture poised, her sharp eyes softened by pride. "The city adores you. I hope you slept, at least a little." Elara forced a smile. "I tried." Lysandra studied her, as though seeing more than Elara dared to reveal. "Take care not to lose yourself to the stage. It has a way of keeping what it loves." Then she was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of old perfume and mystery. Below the stage, Kael was already at work, tightening rigging bolts, checking lanterns, sweeping up stray petals from the night before. His co-workers laughed about the miracle performance that had the tabloids raving, but Kael barely heard them. He couldn't shake what he'd seen. The way the light had pulsed, alive when Elara sang, and the mark that had burned on his wrist, still faintly glowing under his sleeve. He told himself it was a coincidence, maybe a reflection, maybe fatigue. And yet, when he passed the main stage, a faint hum brushed against his hearing, a vibration in the air, soft and melodic, like a heartbeat made of sound. He turned toward the source and saw her. Elara was alone on stage rehearsing a monologue, her voice low and trembling. She didn't see him. He was hidden behind the velvet curtain. But as she spoke, the sunlight streaming through the high glass ceiling gathered around her, forming threads of light that danced at her fingertips. Kael's breath caught. When her hand lifted, the light followed. When she whispered, it shimmered. And then, as suddenly as it began, her body swayed. The light flared, bright, blinding, and Elara collapsed. Kael didn't think. He sprinted forward, crossing the stage in seconds. "Elara!" The name escaped before he realized he'd spoken it. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, her breath shallow. The faint mark near her collarbone pulsed softly like a heartbeat of gold. He knelt beside her, one hand supporting her back, the other trembling slightly as he brushed her hair away. "Can you hear me?" I don't know what happened. The light." Her words trailed off. For a moment, Kael saw something in her gaze, recognition, as if she'd seen him before, somewhere beyond this world. Then, Director Lysandra's voice rang sharply from across the hall. "Kael Arden, what are you doing here?" Kael stiffened. "She fainted. I'm fine."
Elara said quickly, her voice shaky but calm. "He helped me. Please don't blame him." Lysandra's expression softened, though her eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Very well. Miss Voss, take the afternoon off, and you," added she, turning to Kael, "come see me in my office after this." The two locked eyes for a heartbeat, a warning wrapped in politeness, before she turned and guided Elara away. That evening, Kael stood before Lysandra's desk, the dim light from the stained glass window casting colored shadows across the walls. "You saw something last night, and again today," she said without preamble. Kael hesitated. "I don't know what I saw." Her smile was faint, almost sorrowful. "You do. You just don't want to believe it. The theater isn't just stone and stagecraft, Kael. It's alive, and it chooses its vessels. You were right to help her. But be careful. Some lights burn those who touch them." He frowned. "What does that mean?" But Lysandra simply said, "Go home. Rest. The play resumes tomorrow." He left more confused than before. Yet when he reached the theater door, he found something small and glimmering lying on the step, a single star lily petal still warm with light. That night, in her apartment high above the city, Elara sat by her window watching the moon rise over Lunaris. Her thoughts kept drifting to the man who had caught her before she fell, his voice steady, his eyes full of quiet concern. She didn't even know his name, and yet she felt safe for the first time in months. Below the same moon, Kael sat in his small attic room, tracing the faint golden mark on his wrist. When he closed his eyes, he could still hear her voice, soft as starlight, calling out across the distance. Neither knew that far below the theater, behind the old trapdoor, a faint golden pulse began to beat once more, slow and rhythmic, like the awakening of something that had slept for centuries.
The Celestia Theater slept restlessly. At night, when the crowds were gone and the lights dimmed, it seemed to breathe, the velvet curtains shifting with phantom wind, the chandeliers humming with memory. Beneath the stage, water dripped softly from ancient pipes, each drop echoing like a heartbeat. And sometimes, if one listened closely enough, one could hear music, faint, distant, and impossibly beautiful. Kael Arden had begun to hear it. He sat alone in the maintenance corridor, his tools forgotten beside him. It was nearly midnight. Everyone else had gone home hours ago, but the air had begun to hum again, a soft vibration that thrummed beneath the floorboards. The first night he'd heard it, he dismissed it as exhaustion. The second night, coincidence. But now it was impossible to ignore. It wasn't random noise, it was a melody. Soft, yearning, as if the walls themselves remembered a love song long forgotten. Kael followed it, each note leading him deeper into the underbelly of the theater, through twisting stairwells and dust-laden storage rooms. The sound grew stronger, clearer, until he reached the sealed trapdoor, the one that Lysandra had forbidden anyone to open. The iron bolts were rusted, the wood scarred by time. The symbol etched on it glowed faintly under the beam of Kael's flashlight, a star within a circle, identical to the one that had shone on Elara's chest during her collapse. He knelt beside it, his pulse hammering. When his fingers brushed the carving, the air shivered, and his wrist mark flared with golden light. The music stopped, and then a whisper. "She is the light. You are the thread." Kael stumbled backward, breathless. The words weren't heard, they were felt, vibrating through his bones. But before he could think, footsteps echoed from the stage above. Elara stood there in her rehearsal dress, her hair loose, her face pale but radiant in the moonlight that poured through the glass ceiling. "Kael?" she asked softly. "What are you doing down here?" He straightened, trying to find words. I could ask you the same." She smiled faintly, stepping closer.
I couldn't sleep. I thought maybe walking the stage would help, but then I heard something. Music. It led me here. Her eyes drifted toward the trapdoor, and for a moment Kael saw something flicker within them, a reflection of the same light he'd seen last night. "Elara," he said quietly, "have you ever seen things, strange lights maybe, or dreams that feel too real?" Her lips parted, then closed again. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "Since the performance, yes. I see stars when I close my eyes. I hear songs I don't remember learning. And sometimes—" She hesitated. "Sometimes I feel like I'm remembering someone I've never met." Kael exhaled slowly. "Maybe you're not remembering. Maybe you're remembering again." Their eyes met, and the faint glow from the trapdoor brightened, spilling golden light onto their faces. The theater groaned softly, like it was listening. Above them, on the main floor, director Lysandra Vale watched through the balcony shadows. Her fingers clutched the edge of her shawl, her expression unreadable. "It begins again," she whispered. "After all these years." The next day, the theater buzzed with restless energy. The tabloids were still obsessed with Elara's fainting spell, spinning stories about exhaustion, forbidden romance, and haunted stages. She smiled through it all, though her eyes often drifted toward the empty seats where Kael usually worked unseen. By late afternoon, she found him adjusting the lighting rigging. "Kael," she said softly, "thank you for yesterday." He blinked, surprised she even remembered. "You don't have to thank me. I just did what anyone would." Her smile deepened, a flicker of warmth softening her perfect composure. Not everyone would risk being scolded by Lysandra Vale. He laughed quietly, the sound awkward, unused. "I guess not." For a few moments, neither spoke. The air between them shimmered, not just with attraction, but with recognition, as though something older stirred beneath their words. Then, faintly, the floor beneath them thrummed again, a single note, like a string being plucked by unseen fingers. Elara froze. "Did you hear that?" Kael nodded. "It's been happening for days." They exchanged a glance, both knowing they should tell Lysandra, both equally certain they wouldn't. Instead, Kael said softly, "Meet me tonight, after everyone's gone. We'll find out what's beneath the stage." For the first time in years, Elara felt something real stir in her heart. Not fame, not fear, but the thrilling pull of something unknown. She nodded. Midnight. That night, as the city of Lunaris drowned in moonlight, the two figures met again under the great stage. The trapdoor glowed faintly, like it had been waiting for them. The melody returned, soft, haunting, no longer mournful, but expectant. Elara knelt beside Kael, her hand trembling as it reached toward the symbol. "Whatever this is, I feel like we're meant to find it," she whispered. Kael took a breath and laid his hand beside hers. Light burst through the cracks, gentle but blinding, the air filled with the scent of lilies and rain. For one endless heartbeat, they saw images flashing like dreams. A woman in silver robes, a man cloaked in shadow, a promise beneath the stars. Then everything went still. When the light faded, the trapdoor was open, and beneath it lay a staircase spiraling into the darkness, where the song waited for them to follow.
The air beneath the stage was cool and thick with dust and memory. Each step echoed as Elara and Kael descended the spiral staircase, the light of their phones barely pushing back the shadows that clung to the stone walls. The deeper they went, the more the world above began to fade. The sounds of Lunaris, the hum of traffic, even the faint ticking of time itself seemed to disappear. Only the music remained. It wound around them, gentle and ancient, a melody that seemed to remember their names long before they had spoken them. Elara's breath trembled as she whispered, "It's beautiful."
Kael nodded, his voice hushed. It feels alive. At the bottom of the staircase, they stepped into a vast chamber carved entirely of white stone. Columns twisted upward like frozen streams of light, and in the center stood a pool of water so clear it reflected the ceiling's dim glow like a mirror of stars. Suspended above the pool was a single thread of light, thin as silk, glowing faintly gold. It pulsed gently like a living heartbeat. Elara took a step closer, entranced. "What is it?" Kael's gaze softened. "I think it's been waiting for us." When she reached out, the light quivered, hesitant, almost shy, then extended toward her hand. The moment her fingertips brushed it, a warmth spread through her body, flooding her veins with golden fire. Visions came in flashes, a stage of marble under a starlit sky, a woman singing as her tears turned to light, a man in the shadows, watching, protecting, loving her. The visions were too much, too bright. Elara staggered, and Kael caught her. The moment his hands touched her shoulders, the light thread split into two, one end coiling around Ilara's wrist, the other around Kael's. It pulsed once, and then melted into their skin. When the glow faded, they were left in stunned silence. Their hearts pounded in sync, their marks now brighter, pulsing faintly through the skin. "What was that?" Elara whispered. Kael looked at his wrist, the golden mark shimmering like a constellation. "A connection. Whatever this is, it's bound us together." He hesitated, his voice quieter now. "Do you believe in things that can't be explained?" She smiled faintly, tears trembling in her eyes. "I used to think everything had to make sense, but now I think sense is too small a word for what this feels like." Above them, the theater stirred. Unseen by them, lights flickered across the main stage, forming the same star circle symbol that marked their bond. In the director's office, Lysandra Vale opened an old, dust-covered ledger, her expression both sorrowful and resigned. On its first page were two names written in faded ink: Elara of the Stars, the Songbearer; Kaelin of the Shadows, the Guardian of Light. And beneath them, a prophecy written in the flowing script of ages past. "When the star awakens and the shadow remembers, the world shall tremble, and love shall either mend or end the light of all things." Lysandra whispered to herself, "So it begins again. The theater has chosen its players." Back below, Elara knelt beside the pool, gazing into the water. Her reflection shimmered, not as herself, but as another. A woman robed in silver, her eyes glowing faintly like stars. "Kael," she breathed, "I've seen this place before, in my dreams." Kael knelt beside her, his voice steady but reverent. Maybe they weren't dreams. Their reflections shimmered and merged, two figures bound by light. For a moment, the chamber seemed to hum louder, the melody shifting into harmony. And then, faintly, a voice rose from the water, ethereal, feminine, echoing with both sorrow and love. "Remember who you were, and you will know who you are meant to be." The pool rippled once, then stilled. Elara turned to Kael, eyes glistening. "I don't understand what's happening, but I know one thing. Every time I'm near you, the world feels clearer, like I've been looking at my life through glass, and now it's finally breaking." Kael's gaze lingered on her, the warmth between them growing like a sunrise through fog. "Then maybe we're meant to break it. Together." He offered his hand. She hesitated only a heartbeat before taking it. The moment their fingers intertwined, the chamber responded, light bursting upward, spiraling around them, forming symbols and constellations in the air. The ancient melodies swelled, no longer haunting but joyous. For one luminous moment, they stood in the center of it all, bound by a thread of starlight, watched by the unseen spirits of the theater itself. And though they did not yet know the danger that awaited, or the darkness that had begun to stir in the shadows of Lunaris, their hearts burned with something far stronger: hope.
Morning light spilled through the tall arched windows of the Celestia Theater, turning the dust in the air into drifting motes of gold. The place seemed almost peaceful, but beneath its elegance, something had shifted. The theater was awake. Elara could feel it in every echo of her footsteps as she walked across the stage. The boards hummed softly under her feet, like the faint pulse of a heartbeat. Every light above her flickered when she breathed too deeply, as if her emotions whispered to the walls themselves. And every time she closed her eyes, the visions returned. The star-filled halls, the ancient melodies, the woman who looked like her, but older, sadder, carrying both power and grief. "Miss Voss?" came a calm, familiar voice. Director Lysandra Vale stood in the wings, hands clasped, her silver hair gleaming under the stage lights. "A word, please." Elara followed her to the office above the main balcony, a room filled with old playbills, cracked portraits, and the faint scent of lavender and parchment. Lysandra gestured for her to sit, then closed the door quietly. "I believe," she began, "you started to feel the pull." Elara froze. "The pull?" Lysandra studied her for a long moment. "The connection between you and the theater, between you and him." Alara's heartbeat quickened. "Kael?" "Yes," Lysandra said softly. "Kael." She opened an old book from her desk, the same ledger she had studied the night before. The pages were yellowed, but the ink still shimmered faintly with a light of its own. This theater was built on ancient ground. Long before Lunaris became a city of lights, this place was a shrine, dedicated to the celestial spirits of creation. They believed performance, music, and love could bridge the worlds between human and divine. Alara's eyes widened. "A shrine?" Lysandra nodded. "There was once a woman known as Elia of the Stars. She was a singer, said to have been blessed by the heavens. Her voice could summon light itself, and beside her was Kaelin of the Shadows, her protector. Together they kept the balance, her light, his strength." She paused, her voice quieting. "But their love defied the divine order. Elia's song was meant to belong to the stars, not to a mortal man. When they refused to part, a jealous spirit cursed them, binding their souls to return lifetime after lifetime, drawn to each other, but doomed to forget until the theater calls them again." Elara sat motionless. "You're saying that's us?" "I'm saying," she said gently, "the theater has chosen again. The same signs appear every century: the flickering lights, the mark of the star, the songs from beneath the stage. The curse renews, but maybe—" Her eyes softened with something that looked like hope. "Maybe this time it can end differently." That evening, Kael was repairing a broken light fixture when Elara appeared beside him. Her hair was loose, her eyes bright and serious. "You knew something was wrong," she said quietly, "before I did." Kael lowered his tools. "I didn't know anything. I felt it." "I told her everything," she whispered, "about Elia, about Kaelin, about the curse." He met her gaze, his heart thundering. "And do you believe her?" Elara hesitated, then reached for his hand. The moment their skin touched, their marks glowed faintly, responding to each other. "I don't know what I believe, but when I'm near you, it feels like remembering something I've been waiting for all my life." For a heartbeat, they stood there in silence, the hum of the theater surrounding them like soft music. Then the light above them flickered, once, twice, and shattered. Kael instinctively pulled her back as shards rained down. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she breathed, clutching his sleeve.
That wasn't an accident. From the far end of the stage came a sound, a low, resonant hum that rose like a growl. The floorboards rippled with faint light, and from the shadows, black smoke began to gather. Kael's blood ran cold. "Stay behind me." The smoke twisted, forming the faint outline of a figure, tall, faceless, draped in tattered robes that shimmered like oil. The air grew heavy, bitter with the scent of burnt lilies. A voice echoed, low and distorted. "Again the star awakens, again the shadow follows, and again they will fall." Elara clutched Kael's arm. "Who are you?" "The curse that binds you, the end you cannot escape." Light erupted from Elara's hands, instinctive, raw, born of fear and defiance. The entity recoiled, shrieking, then dissolved into smoke. The echo of its laughter lingered even after it vanished. Elara stared at her trembling hands. "I didn't mean to." Kael touched her shoulder gently. "You didn't destroy, you defended." Their eyes met, fear mingled with something fierce and unspoken. Later, as the city outside glittered in the distance, Lysandra stood alone on the balcony, watching them from afar. They've found each other again. But will they remember what broke them before? From the shadows behind her, the faint outline of the smoky figure coalesced once more. "This time," it hissed, "they will not survive their love." Lysandra turned, eyes burning with quiet resolve. "Not if I can rewrite the ending." And beneath the theater, where the pool of stars still shimmered faintly, the thread of light that had bound Elara and Kael pulsed once, brighter than before. The curse was stirring. But so was love.
By the next morning, Celestia Theater was abuzz with whispers. The final rehearsals for the Song of Dawn were underway, and word had spread that Elara's latest performance had set the stage alight, quite literally. The shattered light fixture, the flickering glow, the strange vibration that followed, no one could explain it, though rumors multiplied like moths around a flame. "Ghosts," said one of the chorus girls, clutching her costume. "They say the theater's haunted, maybe by jealous stars who wanted her role." Elara smiled faintly, pretending not to hear. But deep inside, she knew. The theater wasn't haunted. It was awakening. And it was waking for her. That night, as the moon rose over Lunaris, the grand auditorium shimmered with life. Velvet curtains rippled though no wind blew. Chandeliers glowed a little too bright. And beneath it all, she could feel a pulse, rhythmic, steady, as though the stage itself was breathing. Kael stood in the wings, watching her. He'd been assigned to adjust the light rigging again, but his focus was fixed entirely on her. The way her presence commanded silence, the way her voice filled the room like moonlight spilling through darkness. He could feel it too, that connection, electric and alive, drawing him closer even when he tried to resist. But the memory of that shadow, the voice that had called itself the curse, haunted him. Every time he blinked, he saw its form rising from the smoke, promising to destroy what little peace they had. After rehearsal, Elara found him backstage, standing near the old trapdoor that led to the catacombs below the stage. "You were distant tonight," she said softly. Kael turned, his expression shadowed. "Just thinking." "About the curse?" He nodded. "About everything. I keep wondering if what we're feeling, if it's even ours, or just something the theater is forcing on us." Elara stepped closer. "Do you really think love can be forced?" Her words hung between them, quiet, tender, unshakable. He wanted to say no. He wanted to tell her that the way his chest ached when she smiled, the way his hands trembled when she sang, that none of it could be manufactured by magic. But fear tangled his tongue. Instead, he whispered, "I don't know what's real anymore." Elara reached for his hand. "Then
Let's find out together. Later that night, Elara's fame took another leap forward. A well-known journalist, Marin Darcy, requested an interview for Lunaris Weekly, the city's most read arts magazine. They met in the theater's lobby, all mirrors and marble. Cameras flashed, the spotlight was everywhere. Marin's questions started simply, her inspirations, her dreams, her method. But then her tone shifted. "Ms. Voss," she said, pen poised, "you've become the city's obsession overnight. Some even say strange things happen when you perform. Lights flicker, air shifts, whispers echo. Do you believe in magic?" Elara hesitated. Kael, from the sidelines, tensed. "I believe," she said slowly, "that art itself is a kind of magic, the kind that connects people beyond logic or reason." A graceful dodge, but Marin wasn't satisfied. "And your connection with the stagehand, Kael Rivers, isn't it? There are rumors of a relationship." Elara blinked, caught off guard. "He's a friend, someone who's always there when things fall apart." Marin smiled, but there was something sharp behind her eyes. How poetic, perhaps more than friendship then? Kael turned away before anyone saw his expression. He didn't belong in her world of lights and acclaim, and yet somehow he was bound to her by something deeper than either of them could deny. That night, as the theater emptied, Elara found Kael standing on the roof, staring out at the moonlit city. "I didn't tell her," she said softly. He didn't turn around. "You didn't have to. The world already sees it." Elara moved closer, the wind catching her hair. "Let them see. I'm tired of hiding what feels right." He finally faced her, and his eyes were storm dark. "And when the curse comes for us again, when loving you means destroying everything you've built." Elara's voice was steady. "Then I'd rather burn with you than live half alive without you." Something broke inside him then, not in pain, but in surrender. He took her face in his hands and kissed her beneath the starlight. The moment their lips met, the entire city seemed to breathe. Lights across the skyline flickered once, twice, a ripple of energy that danced through every corner of Lunaris. Down below, inside the empty theater, the chandeliers blazed to life on their own. The curtains rippled as if applauding. But far beneath the stage, in the pool of starlight that never went dark, the shadow stirred again, watching, waiting. And this time, it whispered a single word: "Soon." The night after their kiss, the Celestia Theater seemed almost alive, humming, breathing, watching. Every chandelier burned brighter than usual. Every shadow seemed to shift just a little too slowly. Elara woke before dawn, unable to shake the dream that had haunted her sleep. She stood before a vast mirror, her reflection glowing with silver light, and when she looked closer, it wasn't her staring back. It was the woman from her visions, Elara. And behind her, cloaked in darkness, stood Kaelin, the man whose eyes burned with devotion and sorrow. She could still hear Elara's voice whispering as she awoke. "Find the mirror. The truth waits beneath the stage." By noon, Elara found Kael in the prop room mending an old velvet curtain. His sleeves were rolled up, his forearms smudged with dust, and his expression thoughtful, almost distant. "I saw her again," she said quietly. He looked up. "Her?" "The woman, Elara. She said we need to find the mirror beneath the stage." Kael's eyes darkened. "That trapdoor again." They'd both avoided it since the night the shadow appeared. The heavy iron hatch lay near the center of the stage, almost invisible beneath the painted floorboards. But now, with the memory of the dream still burning in her mind, Elara felt drawn to it, as if something below was calling her by name. When the evening crowd cleared and the theater fell silent, they returned. Elara carried a small lantern, Kael a crowbar. With a grunt, he pried open the hatch, revealing a spiral staircase that descended into darkness. Cold air rose from below, old, damp, and heavy with the scent of stone and memory. "After you?" Kael offered, half a smile. She arched her brow. "You're the one with delight." Together they descended, each step echoing softly in the silence. The air grew cooler the deeper they went. Stone walls appeared, carved with faint symbols that glimmered faintly in the lantern's glow. Constellations, perhaps, or ancient runes shaped like falling stars. At the bottom, they reached a massive chamber. It was vast and circular, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center stood a pool of still water, and above it, suspended like a fragment of the sky itself, a floating mirror framed in silver and gold. The mirror shimmered faintly, its surface not glass, but liquid light, rippling gently as though it were alive. Elara stepped closer, her breath catching. "It's beautiful." Kael reached out to stop her. "Wait, we don't know what it—" But the mirror reacted to her presence. Its surface brightened, reflecting not her current self, but another world entirely. They saw a grand ballroom under the stars. Musicians played with instruments made of crystal. And there, on a balcony overlooking the heavens, stood Elara, radiant, divine, her gown flowing like liquid moonlight. Beside him was Kaelin, cloaked in silver and shadow, his gaze fixed solely on her. They spoke words neither could hear, but the emotion was unmistakable. Longing, fear, defiance. Then, as Elara reached for Kaelin's hand, the stars above them dimmed. A third figure emerged, the shadow from their dreams, faceless and seething. It raised its hand, and the world shattered into darkness. Elara gasped and stumbled back. Kael caught her before she fell. The mirror dimmed, returning to its still, silvery glow. "What did we just see?" she whispered. Kael's grip tightened on her arms. "Our past." She looked up at him, eyes shimmering with tears. "We were them." He nodded slowly. "Elara of the stars. Kaelin of the shadows. It's us, reborn." The realization settled like a heartbeat between them. Everything made sense now. The visions, the connection, the light that answered her fear. "But why show us this now?" she asked. As if an answer, the chamber trembled. The mirror began to ripple again, faster this time, until words appeared across its surface, glowing like burning constellations. The bond must be remembered before it can be broken. Elara frowned. "Remembered?" Kael's voice was quiet. "It means there's something else, something we've forgotten, something we need to face before we can be free." A faint sound echoed through the chamber, a whisper, low and familiar. It was the same voice they had heard before, mocking and cruel. "You think memory can save you. It is memory that will destroy you." The mirror cracked. Light burst out like a storm, throwing them both to the floor. Images flashed, lifetimes of love and loss, of fire and tears. Elara dying in Kaelin's arms beneath the same moon that now watched over Lunaris. Her last words echoing like promise across centuries. "We'll find each other again, even if the stars burn away." And then, silence. When Elara opened her eyes, Kael was beside her, blood on his temple, but breathing. The mirror had gone dark, its surface now solid stone. "It's gone," Elara whispered. "No," Kael said softly. "It gave us what we needed. The truth." As they climbed back toward the stage, the theater above seemed to stir, the lights flickering like distant stars. And for the first time, Elara didn't feel afraid of what was coming. If they had loved once through death and time itself, then maybe, just maybe, they could love through this curse too. High above them, in the director's balcony, Lysandra watched as the theater lights dimmed back to normal. She had seen the glow from beneath the stage, felt the old magic stirring again. "They've found the mirror," she whispered. From the shadow behind her, the smoky figure took shape, its voice cold and mocking. "And in doing so, they've sealed their fate." Lysandra turned slowly, her eyes fierce. "Not if I have anything to say about it."
The theater was unusually quiet that morning. The hum that had filled its walls since Elara's arrival was now a faint murmur, like a breath drawn in and held, waiting. Lysandra Vale stood alone on the stage, her reflection gazing back from the polished wood floor. In the dim light, she looked less like a director and more like a guardian of something ancient, someone who had been waiting far too long for a story to find its ending. She ran her fingers along the edge of the stage, pausing above the hidden trapdoor that Elara and Kael had opened the night before. "So, they've finally seen it?" A shadow stirred behind her, Kael's voice. "You knew about it." Lysandra didn't turn. "Of course I did." Elara stepped out from behind him, her eyes bright and searching. "Then you know who we are." Lysandra finally faced them. Her expression held neither surprise nor denial, only quiet resignation. Elara and Kaelin, the lovers the stars themselves envied. Elara swallowed hard. "You knew from the start?" "I've known for a long time, because I was there." Kael frowned. "What do you mean?" "Not as one of you, but as one who watched it all happen. I was the keeper of the shrine, the one who bound the curse the night it began." The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Lysandra led them into her office, though it now looked less like an office and more like a sanctum. The walls were covered in maps of constellations and faded sketches of the Celestia Theater in its earlier forms, temples, ruins, and shrines. She pulled an old book from the shelf, bound in silver thread. Its pages smelled of candle, smoke, and rain. When Elara defied the heavens and gave her heart to Kaelin, the celestial order deemed it blasphemy. Their union broke the balance. Light and shadow joined as one. The jealous spirit who cursed them was Astron, guardian of the star realm. He swore that if their love ever rekindled, the worlds would collapse into one another, and the mortal realm would burn. Elara's voice trembled. "So the curse wasn't just punishment. It was protection." Lysandra nodded. "A cruel kind of mercy. Their souls would return, lifetime after lifetime, drawn to each other but doomed to forget, until the bond was pure enough to endure without consuming the world." Kael's jaw tightened. "And if we fail again?" "The curse will reset. You'll forget. The theater will sleep, and the world will wait another 100 years." Elara stood silent for a long time. Then, with quiet defiance, she said, "We won't fail." Lysandra smiled faintly, a sad, knowing smile. "That's what you said the last time." Later, when the evening lights dimmed and the stage was bathed in a soft golden glow, Elara stood in the wings, staring out into the empty seats. She said it's a test, that the world will burn if we love too fiercely. Kael was beside her, leaning against the prop table. "Then maybe the world deserves a little fire." Elara laughed softly, though tears shimmered in her eyes. "You're reckless. I'm alive. And I'm done letting fear decide how much love is allowed." She turned to him then, not as an actress, not as a star,
but as a woman who had carried too many lifetimes of silence. Then, let's defy them again. That night, as they rehearsed the Song of Dawn, something strange began to happen. When Elara sang, the chandeliers dimmed, not from power failure, but as if the world itself was listening. Her voice wove through the air like light through glass, shimmering with something not entirely human. And Kael, working the lights above, found his hands glowing faintly, every movement syncing perfectly with her rhythm. Light and shadow dancing together. Lysandra watched from the balcony, eyes glistening. It was happening again. The same harmony, the same danger. But this time, she noticed something different. The mirror beneath the stage had begun to hum softly, its sealed surface cracking open once more. The prophecy had begun to stir. After rehearsal, Lysandra called Kael to her office. The moment he entered, she locked the door. "There's something you need to know," she said, her tone urgent. "The theater isn't just a building, it's a vessel, one that holds the boundary between the realms. If the curse breaks the wrong way, the star realm will flood this one. Every spark of magic will become fire." Kael's brow furrowed. "And if it breaks the right way? Then love wins, but that has only ever happened once in all time, when a mortal chose to give up everything, even memory, to protect the one they loved." He studied her. "Why are you telling me this?" Lysandra's voice softened. "Because the choice will fall to you. It always does." Kael's chest tightened. "You mean I'll have to decide whether to save her or the world?" She finished quietly. The silence that followed was heavy and endless. That night, Elara dreamed again. She stood in a hall of stars, surrounded by countless mirrors. In each one, she saw different versions of herself: singer, queen, spirit, mortal, all reaching out towards the same shadowed figure, Kaelin. Love is the thread between worlds, but a thread can bind or break. Choose how you will weave it. When she woke, her pillow was damp with tears, and the faint outline of her star-shaped mark glowed softly against her skin. In the theater's undercroft, the mirror's crack widened. Light spilled from within, golden, alive, and whispering of things that should not wake. And in the balcony above, Lysandra whispered a silent prayer. "Let this time be the one where love finally wins."
The night sky over Lunaris was a tapestry of quiet stars, the same constellations that had watched over the world for 1,000 years. But inside the Celestia Theater, something ancient was stirring. The mirror beneath the stage pulsed faintly like a living heart. With each tremor, light seeped through the floorboards above, rising like threads of gold. And in her sleep, Elara Voss began to remember. The dream came not as shadow, but as light. She stood beneath an open sky filled with galaxies, a temple of marble and silver around her. Every surface shimmered with starlight. Every breeze sang with music from worlds beyond. She knew this place. It was the shrine of the Celestia, where Elara had once sung to the stars. And she was no longer Elara. She was Elira. The silk gown clung to her skin, alive with constellations. Her voice carried across the vast halls, weaving spells into the air. And when she turned, there he was, Kaelin. Dressed in a cloak of silver shadow, eyes dark as midnight, his expression equal parts awe and fear. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her heart racing. He smiled, that same quiet, reckless smile that Kael wore in the present day. "You said you wanted to show me the stars." Elira took a trembling breath. "They'll see us." "Then let them." He stepped closer. "I've spent lifetimes guarding your light from afar. Let me stand in it,
just once. She reached for him, but before their hands touched, the air changed, growing cold, heavy. The starlight dimmed. From the temple's center, a new light began to burn, too bright, too angry. It coalesced into a figure made of molten silver and flame. Its eyes blazed with fury. "Elara of the stars," the spirit thundered, "you were chosen to serve the heavens, not your heart." Elara bowed her head. "Astron, please." But Astron raised his hand. "You have tainted divine song with mortal shadow. For this, your voices will be bound to the theater forever, your souls reborn, drawn together, but never free." Kaelin moved in front of her, defiant. "Then curse me alone." Astron's voice shook the pillars. "You are one soul now. The curse will be shared, for when her light rises, your shadow will fall. And when she remembers you, death will find you both." He raised his hand, but before the curse could strike, Elara sang. Her voice rose like dawn breaking through night. Soft, fierce, divine, it clashed with Astron's wrath, the air filling with stars that shattered into flame. The temple fell apart. Kaelin's arms caught her as the light collapsed around them. "I'll find you again," she whispered, fading. And then, darkness. Elara woke with a gasp, drenched in sweat. The moonlight through her window shimmered faintly, as though the stars themselves were listening. She pressed a trembling hand to her heart. The memories were no longer fragments. They were her. Every note, every promise, every tear Elara had shed belonged to her now. She had been cursed for love, but she had also fought for it. She found Kael on the theater roof again, leaning against the railing, eyes on the horizon. "I remember," she said softly. He turned, startled. "What do you mean?" "Everything," she whispered. "The temple, the curse, you." He stared at her, the night wind tugging at his hair. "Then you know what I am?" "Yes." She stepped closer. "And I don't care." Kael laughed bitterly. "You should. Every time you remember, the curse tightens. It wants to erase us, Elara. It feeds on what we feel." "Then let it starve," she said fiercely. "I won't run from love again." Something broke in him then. Not weakness, but surrender. He reached for her and their hands met. Light burst from their marks, spiraling into the air like ribbons of stardust. For a heartbeat, the entire city seemed to shimmer. Buildings outlined in faint silver glow, people paused mid-step without knowing why. The world remembered them too. But the light was followed by a deep, resonant tremor, a warning. Far below, the mirror beneath the stage cracked wider, and from within its surface, the shadow of Astron began to rise once more. Down in her office, Lysandra felt the tremor before she saw it. Her old book fell open on its own, pages fluttering to a passage written in celestial runes. When the star remembers the shadow, the bond is complete. But love reborn may unmake the world if not guided by sacrifice. Lysandra's breath caught. "It's begun," she whispered. Back on the rooftop, Elara leaned her forehead against Kael's. "If this curse feeds on fear, then we'll give it none." Kael smiled through the ache in his chest. "You're impossible." "And you," she murmured, "are worth every curse in the cosmos." But as she spoke, the horizon began to flicker, faint, ethereal lights shimmering in the clouds like cracks in reality. The boundary between worlds was beginning to thin. And beneath the theater, the voice of Astron echoed softly, no longer angry, but almost mournful. Light and shadow cannot share the same sky. But somewhere deep within that fading darkness, another voice answered, quiet, defiant. and eternal. They already do.
The dawn that followed was unlike any other. It bled across the skyline in streaks of violet and gold, but beneath its beauty, the city trembled. The people of Lunaris woke to mirrors flickering with ghostly light, to shadows moving where none should be. The sea itself glittered with fragments of starlight, as though heaven had shattered and fallen into its depths. And at the heart of it all stood the Celestia Theater, glowing faintly, pulsing like the heart of a living thing. Elara Voss stepped onto the main stage. Every plank beneath her feet thrummed with energy, whispering in a language she half understood. The air shimmered faintly, bending around her like glass catching fire. Kael was already there, kneeling by the mirror's cracked surface. The lines that had appeared the night before had widened overnight, jagged veins of silver cutting through the glass, reflecting not just the theater, but another world beyond. "Kael," she whispered, "what's happening to it?" He didn't look up. The curse is waking. The mirror isn't just a portal, it's the prison that keeps Astron sealed. When you remembered who you were, it weakened the lock. Ilara's stomach turned. "So by remembering, I set him free?" "Not yet," Kael said softly, "but he's fighting, and every time your light grows stronger, so does his shadow." Above them, the chandeliers began to sway, though no wind blew. Elara could feel the hum of magic beneath her skin, like an ancient song calling her home. She closed her eyes, listening. And then she heard it. Faint at first, like echoes of a lullaby sung by 1,000 voices. The stars were singing. Meanwhile, Lysandra stood in the theater's grand balcony, watching the light seep through the cracks of the stage. Her once calm face was now shadowed with worry. She had known this moment would come, but not so soon, not so violently. Behind her, Aaron, the young stage technician who had once been Kael's apprentice, spoke quietly. "You knew this would happen, didn't you?" Lysandra's lips tightened. "I hoped it wouldn't." "What are they going to do?" Aaron asked. "If Astron rises, he'll reclaim the light he believes was stolen from him, and Lunaris will fall back into the void between worlds." Aaron frowned. "Then we stop him." Lysandra turned to him, surprised by his determination. "You don't understand, child. This isn't a battle of blades. It's a battle of hearts." On the stage, the mirror's glow brightened, spilling radiant mist that spiraled upward, forming shapes, faces, memories, scenes from centuries past. Elira's songs, Kaelin's laughter, their defiance, their fall. The air rippled with the weight of history reborn. "Elara," Kael said, standing, "if we can finish the Song of Remembrance, the one Elira began before Astron cursed us, we might be able to break the bond without destroying the world." Elara blinked. "You think a song can undo a curse this old?" He smiled faintly. "It wasn't just a song, it was a promise, one strong enough to stop the heavens themselves." As if an answer, the doors of the theater burst open. Wind howled through the grand hall, scattering sheet music and ribbons of light. And from the storm that followed, a figure began to emerge. Tall, draped in molten silver, eyes burning like collapsing stars. Astron, the fallen guardian of the Celestia Shrine. His voice filled the room like thunder and silk. "So, this is what your love has wrought. A world cracked between light and shadow. Elira, Kaelin, you should have perished long ago." Kael stepped forward. "We did, again and again, but love doesn't die, it waits." Astron's gaze hardened. "Love defies balance, it consumes. You are the wound the cosmos cannot close." Elara lifted her chin, trembling but defiant. "If love is a wound, then let it bleed light." For the first time, Astron hesitated, as though her voice carried something ancient, something divine. The theater began to quake, columns cracked, mirrors shattered. Beyond the broken glass,
glimpses of other worlds bled through. Skies of sapphire fire, oceans made of stars, cities that hung upside down in the void. Kael grabbed Elara's hand. If the worlds merge, everything will collapse. We have to finish the song now. But I don't remember all of it, she cried. He looked at her, eyes filled with fierce faith. Then feel it. Let your soul remember what your mind cannot. She closed her eyes, and when she began to sing, the world fell silent. Her voice rose like dawn over endless night, trembling at first, then steady, strong, radiant. Notes shimmered through the air, weaving patterns of starlight that wrapped around the cracks in reality, slowing them, healing them. Kael joined her, his voice deeper, shadowed, but harmonious. Together, they sang the words that had once bound the stars themselves. Light and shadow, breath and flame. One heart, one soul, one endless name. What heavens tore, we now repair, by love, by faith, by all we dare. The air blazed, the curse screamed. Astron's voice shattered the silence. Do you think you can defy the laws of creation? Elara's eyes glowed with starlight. No, we're rewriting them. The last note rang out, pure, unbroken, infinite. The mirror exploded into a rain of silver light that washed across the theater, across Lunaris, across the stars themselves. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the curse trembled. Astron fell to his knees, his form flickering between shadow and light. In his eyes, the rage had softened, replaced by sorrow. I only wanted the stars to stay pure, he whispered. Elara knelt before him, her voice soft. Then let them be pure through love, not fear. He reached out, hesitant, trembling, and when his hand met hers, the light engulfed them both. When the brilliance faded, the stage was quiet. The mirror was gone, and Astron was no longer there. Only the faint hum of peace remained, a silence so deep it felt like the world holding its breath after a storm. Elara looked at Kael, tears glimmering like stars in her eyes. Did we win? Kael smiled faintly. No, we healed. They stood together on the stage that had once been their prison, now their sanctuary. Outside, the first true dawn of Lunaris rose, soft and golden, spilling through the shattered windows like forgiveness itself. Far above, among the constellations, 2 new stars ignited side by side, one of light, one of shadow, twined forever. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the heavens sang back.
The first rays of dawn broke gently over Lunaris, painting the city in hues of rose and gold. The streets glistened as if washed clean by a celestial rain. Every window reflected a strange and peaceful shimmer, as though the world itself had exhaled after holding its breath for centuries. The Celestia Theater stood silent in the heart of the city, its once cracked walls now whole, though faint traces of silver light still traced the edges of every beam and panel, like veins of magic, reminding the world what it had survived. Inside, dust motes drifted through the air, glowing softly in the early light. Elara woke on the stage floor, the wooden boards warm beneath her palms. Her dress, once torn and stained with celestial ash, now shimmered faintly, whole again, threads of starlight woven into its fabric. Her heart beat slow and steady, but she felt different, lighter, free. Kael was there beside her, sitting quietly with his back against a broken column, staring at the soft morning light spilling through the shattered glass dome above. His dark hair caught faint streaks of silver, remnants of shadow turned to starlight. When she stirred, his eyes lifted, and for a heartbeat they only looked at each other. No words, just recognition, not of past lives,
but of the present one they had earned. "Morning," Kael said at last, voice low, rough-edged from exhaustion. Elara smiled weakly. "Morning," she echoed. Then softly, "We're still here." Kael gave a faint, incredulous laugh. "Guess the universe couldn't handle losing us again." Elara reached for his hand. "No, it learned to let us stay." Their fingers touched, and the faint silver mark on their wrists pulsed months, not in pain, but in peace. The curse was gone, yet the bond remained, no longer a chain, but a choice. A door creaked open at the back of the theater. Lysandra stepped in carrying a lantern that she didn't need anymore. Daylight poured through every crack. Behind her followed Aaron, the young technician, his face bright with disbelief. "You did it," Lysandra whispered, her usually calm voice trembling with awe. "The mirror's gone. The curse, it's truly over." Kael nodded slowly. "Astron's gone too." Lysandra's expression softened with something like sorrow. "He wasn't just a villain, you know. He was the first guardian of light, until grief twisted his purpose." "I know," Elara said quietly. "And in the end he understood." Lysandra's gaze lingered on her. Perhaps that's what redemption looks like. Not perfection, but understanding. For a moment, none of them spoke. The theater was still, yet full of something vast and alive, the hum of a new beginning. Outside, the streets of Lunaris were beginning to stir. People spoke of strange dreams, of seeing two stars cross paths in the dawn sky. Musicians woke with new melodies in their hearts. Painters found colors they had never mixed before. Magic, once sealed, had begun to return to the world, not as chaos, but as harmony. Elara stood by the open doors of the theater and watched the sunrise flood the marble steps. She had dreamed of applause, of fame and beauty, but now she found herself longing only for peace, for honesty, for life. Kael joined her, his eyes reflecting the morning sky. "So what now?" he asked. "The show must go on?" She laughed softly. "Maybe, but this time, no masks, no scripts written by fear." He smiled. "Then let's write our own." A few days later, the Celestia Theater reopened, not as a temple of vanity, but as a sanctuary for stories, music, and light. The townspeople called it the House of Stars. Every night, candles lined its balcony, and the audience swore that when Elara sang, they could hear the faint echo of another voice, deep, shadowed, and impossibly beautiful, joining hers in harmony. And in that sound, they felt hope. One evening, long after the crowd had gone, Elara found herself alone on stage. She stood at the center, looking up through the glass dome at the two new stars burning side by side, one bright white, one deep silver. "Do you think they're watching us?" she murmured. Kael from the wings smiled faintly. "They're not watching," he said, stepping into the light. "They are us." She turned to him, the man she had lost across lifetimes, found through curses and time, now standing before her as the world mended around them. Elara walked to him, her footsteps soft as a melody. When she reached him, she whispered, "Then let's make this lifetime count." And when they kissed, the lights in the theater flickered, the stars outside shimmered, and somewhere, deep in the endless night, the cosmos sighed in contentment. Because love had not only survived the ages, it had healed them. That night, the city of Lunaris slept beneath twin stars that would never again fade, and the legend of the star and the stagehand lived on, not as a tragedy whispered in shadows, but as a song of hope sung by generations to come. Even when the light forgets the way home, love will remember.
Years passed. Seasons melted into one another like watercolor fading beneath sunlight. The city of Lunaris thrived, reborn from the ashes of its old magic. The Celestia Theater, once a place of whispers and curses, now stood as the city's heart, a sanctuary of stories, laughter, and song. Every night, lights shimmered across its marble arches, casting reflections that danced across the plaza below. And if you listened closely, you could still hear faint music in the air, the memory of a melody too ancient and beautiful to belong to this world. The Reawakening. Elara Voss, once the adored actress, now the soul of Lunaris, had become something more than mortal fame could measure. She no longer performed for applause, but for remembrance. Her songs told of love that defied fate, of a shadow who taught the light to see beyond perfection. Her voice carried warmth through the coldest nights, and those who heard her swore they felt something stir in their hearts, as if a forgotten part of them had been healed by her song. And always, beside her, in the quiet spaces where no spotlight reached, stood Kael. Not as the unseen stagehand anymore, but as her equal, her partner, the keeper of light and shadow. Together, they rebuilt the theater, trained new performers, and helped others find their voices, teaching that art was not just for glory, but for truth. Lysandra's Journal. One quiet afternoon, Lysandra sat in her study, sunlight pooling over her desk. Her hair had grown streaked with silver, and her once steely eyes were soft with contentment. In front of her lay an old leather-bound book, the same one that had warned her of the curse so long ago. Now its pages glowed faintly with warmth. She dipped her quill and began to write. The curse has ended, but its song remains. For every age must remember that love is not weakness nor rebellion. It is the force that shapes creation itself. The star and the stagehand did not merely survive their fate, they transformed it. And through their defiance, Lunaris learned to sing again. She paused, smiling faintly as laughter echoed faintly from the hall outside. Elara's laugh, bright as wind chimes, followed by Kael's deeper chuckle. Perhaps the stars do not choose us. Perhaps we choose them every time we love without fear. The Festival of Twin Stars. A decade later, the city of Lunaris declared a new celebration, the Festival of Twin Stars. Each year, under the shimmering constellations, the people gathered at the theater. They filled the plaza with lanterns shaped like stars, one pale white, one silver gray, and released them into the sky. Children listened wide-eyed as storytellers spoke of the actress who sang to the heavens and the shadow who loved her enough to rewrite destiny. Some said the story was a myth, others swore it was history, but everyone felt it was true. The final performance. Elara grew older, though time touched her gently. Her hair shimmered with threads of white, her voice softer but no less divine. One night, she stood on stage for what she knew would be her final song. The theater was silent, not from sorrow, but reverence. Kael stood behind her in the wings, hands clasped, his eyes filled with pride and something eternal. Elara looked up through the glass dome where the twin stars still shone, her and Kael's eternal reflection. She took a breath and began to sing. Beyond the curtain of time we rise, past shadowed seas and endless skies. What was lost now gently found in hearts where love makes no sound. For every dawn,
For every start, the song of us still warms the dark. Her voice lingered in the air long after she stopped. When she turned, Kael was there, smiling, tears glinting like starlight. "Still the same song," he whispered. "Always," she replied, "because it never ended." The promise. Years later, when the two were gone from the mortal world, the Celestia Theater remained. Visitors would sometimes claim to see them in the balcony during quiet nights, Elara in her soft ivory gown, Kael in shadowed silver. Some swore they could hear a faint duet echoing through the halls, two voices entwined, still singing to the stars. And those who listened closely said the theater itself seemed alive, humming softly, not with magic, but with love that had refused to fade. A new dawn. Centuries later, when the stories of old had turned into legend, a young girl named Lyra stood on the same stage. She was nervous, her first performance before the grand audience of Lunaris. Her hands trembled as she looked up at the ceiling, where two stars glowed faintly through the glass dome. And in that moment, she felt it, a warmth around her, like unseen hands guiding her, like voices whispering, "Sing, child. The stars are listening." When she began to sing, her voice was clear and bright, and for an instant, the two stars above shimmered more brightly than they had in centuries. Somewhere, beyond time and worlds, two souls smiled. Love had found its way again. The star and the stagehand, a tale not of ending, but of remembering. For every heart that loves without fear becomes part of their song, and that song will never fade.
Even across lifetimes, their song endured. Through the breaking of curses, through the silence of stars, they loved, they lost, and they became legends. The Star and the Stagehand is not just a tale of destiny, it is a reminder that even when the light forgets the way home, love will remember. Written by Paris Kamel, brought to life by Whisperglass Stories. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales where love defies time and every ending glows with hope.